Hi there, this is Bo Nicholson and you're listening to Snob Reviews Movies. Let's talk about the latest blockbuster from Christopher Nolan, Dunkirk.
They need to send more ships. Every hour the enemy pushes closer. They've activated the civilian boats. Civilians? We need destroyers. Where are we going?
Dunkirk.
It's May in 1940 and the Germans are winning World War II. In fact, they've driven the Allied forces back so far that they've surrounded them in the small, northern French fishing town of Dunkirk, which lies on the banks of the English Channel. The Allies are in constant, imminent danger, and there are about 400,000 of them surrounded by about 800,000 German soldiers. Fortunately for the Allies, the Germans issued a halt order, which meant that instead of wasting tanks and troops on a land attack, they would just pick off the stranded troops from the air with their Luftwaffe. With Britain just across the Channel, new Prime Minister Winston Churchill enacted an evacuation order, with naval and private vessels sent into the battle in what became an evacuation of over 300,000 Allied troops, lifted the spirits of the Allies and ensured that they lived to fight another day, proving to be one of the turning points of the Great War. Now that you know the history, let's talk about the film. Christopher Nolan is in a class all of his own as a filmmaker, and I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment. Sure, he's definitely made some great films like Memento or Batman Begins, but he's also made some pretty average ones that have only been overpraised, like crazy really, because of pretentious twists, like The Prestige or Interstellar. But one thing that you can say about Nolan is that he is probably the only director in the world right now that is able to consistently demand blockbuster budgets and also make films that don't easily fit into a genre mold. And for good or bad reasons, his films are always memorable. In fact, they are an event. And Dunkirk is certainly an event, but it is different to what I thought it would be. When I think of Christopher Nolan, I think of terrible dialogue, twist endings, long run times, and repetitive soundtracks. And when I think of war movies, I think of politics-heavy, brutal affairs that go for way too long. Well, I can happily report that Dunkirk eschews those stereotypes to deliver an experience that is well executed, tense, and inspiring. And all in less than 2 hours. One of the big pluses of Dunkirk is that it looks absolutely beautiful, with director of photography Hoyt van Hoytema, who also did the cinematography for Her, delivering not only startling images, but also creating a real sense of claustrophobia at the right moments, adding to the tension of the film. Hans Zimmer provides the score, which has moments of strings atop a synth arrangement all set to a ticking clock that gradually quickens and quickens and quickens until it stops. And then there is silence. In Dunkirk, silence may be the scariest sound of all, because you never know when that silence will be interrupted by a Luftwaffe aircraft about to make it rain bombs over the over-inhabited beach, or a barrage of bullets that peppers whatever fortress the Allies could muster. Mercifully, the film is not riddled with Nolan's trademark dialogue, which is usually so weighed down with exposition and gravitas that it suffocates his movies. In fact, this movie has very little dialogue from most characters, with the actors forced to use their actions and reactions to tell the audience how the events are making them feel. It's a cast with some big names like Tom Hardy and Cillian Murphy, and also some newcomers. But Mark Rylance, as a civilian boat owner who sails headfirst into Dunkirk to do his bit for the war effort, is wonderfully understated and steals the show, while Harry Styles is surprisingly solid with the amount of work that he has to do. Christopher Nolan couldn't help but slip in some bad dialogue, which Kenneth Branagh had to recite the brunt of, but overall, the restraint from Nolan is impressive. In a lot of ways, it's a pretty straight movie from Nolan, except for his narrative device that allows the movie to play out over 3 different timelines. It may take some getting used to for some audiences, but this technique allows the land, sea, and air efforts all to hit a climax at the same time on the screen, while dividing screen time evenly across the film. Unfortunately, he didn't quite knock this out of the park, as telling the story completely actually forces him to show some of the same events 2 or 3 times for each character arc to make sense. Sadly, This stunts the impact of the ending of the movie somewhat, but I must admit, a tear was starting to well in my eye regardless. And maybe, with his past of pretentious, pseudo-intellectual and overly complex films, this movie really strikes a chord because it actually means something to Nolan. How could it not? The spirit of Dunkirk was something that shaped the British war effort. It became a phrase that epitomized the efforts of all Brits throughout this time of adversity that was World War II. And Christopher Nolan is a British man. This is his Omaha Beach, his Gallipoli. It is both very Nolan and also unlike anything he has produced, and largely better for it. It's a hell of an achievement and well worth seeing on the big screen. It's the best film of the year so far, and it gets 4 stars from me.